The Grand Belmore Hotel in Manhattan stood like a crystalline monument against the gray October sky. Rain threatened to fall at any moment, heavy clouds hanging over the city like a dark omen that no one seemed to notice. Inside the main ballroom, adorned with thousands of white roses and golden chandeliers, over 300 guests waited anxiously for what promised to be the wedding of the year. Isabella Venturi adjusted her Vera Wang dress for the 10th time, her trembling fingers barely able to hold the delicate French lace. The mirror in the bridal suite reflected a woman who looked perfect on the outside. Dark hair elegantly pinned up, subtle makeup highlighting her green eyes, a dress that cost more than most people earned in a year. But inside, she felt like she was drowning. "You look absolutely stunning, darling," her mother, Carmela Venturi, said as she entered the room, her Chanel suit impeccable as always. Her cold smile didn't reach her eyes. "The Castellano family will be very pleased. This union will finally bring the peace our families need." Peace. That word tasted bitter in Isabella's mouth. This wasn't about peace. It was about power, territory, and old debts being paid with her life as currency. "Mom, Isabella began, but her voice faltered. What could she say? That she didn't love Marco Castellano? That every time he touched her hand, her skin crawled? That she'd been having nightmares for weeks about this exact moment? "Not now, Isabella." Carmela's voice was sharp as a blade. "Your father has worked too hard to arrange this alliance. Marco is a good man from a respectable family. You'll learn to love him. I learned to love your father, didn't I?" The lie was so obvious it hurt. Everyone knew Carmela had married Vittorio Venturi out of obligation, not love, and everyone knew how that story had ended, with separate lives lived under the same roof, bound only by appearances and shared interests. A soft knock interrupted the tense moment. Sophia, Isabella's younger sister, peeked through the door, her expression a mix of excitement and concern. "It's time, Bella," Sophia whispered, using the childhood nickname only she was allowed to use. "Everyone's waiting." Isabella took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, she'd made a decision, the same decision women in her family had made for generations. She would do her duty. She would walk down that aisle. She would say "I do" to a man she didn't love, but fate, it seemed, had other plans. The wedding march began to play as Isabella appeared at the entrance of the grand ballroom. Every head turned. Cameras flashed. The murmur of admiration rippled through the crowd like a wave. Marco Castellano stood at the altar, tall and handsome in his custom Tom Ford tuxedo, a satisfied smile on his face as if he'd just closed the business deal of the century, which, in a way, he had. Isabella began her slow walk down the white carpeted aisle, each step feeling heavier than the last. Her father, Vittorio, gripped her arm perhaps a bit too tightly as if afraid she might run. On both sides, she recognized faces. The Castellano family on the right, the Venturis on the left, and scattered throughout, representatives from every major family in New York's underground network. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a summit, a treaty signing, a reorganization of power. She was halfway down the aisle when she heard it, a disturbance at the back of the ballroom. Raised voices, the sound of heavy doors being forced open. The music faltered, then stopped completely. Isabella turned, her heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with nervousness, and then she saw him. Jackson Moretti walked through the main doors as if he owned the place, which, given his reputation, he probably could have if he wanted to. 6 feet 3 inches of controlled danger, dressed entirely in black, from his perfectly tailored suit to his shirt to his tie. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd rushed to get there, and his ice-blue eyes scanned the room with the predatory focus of a wolf entering a sheep pen. Behind him, 4 men in similar black suits fanned out, their hands conspicuously close to their jacket openings. Security guards rushed forward but stopped dead when they saw who had arrived. Even Marco's personal bodyguards seemed frozen in place. Everyone in that room knew who Jackson Moretti was, the Black Mafia's youngest boss in history, the man who'd taken over the organization at 25 after his father's assassination, and had transformed it into the most feared criminal network on the East Coast. Ruthless, calculating, untouchable, and he was staring directly at Isabella. "What is the meaning of this?" Vittorio Venturi's voice boomed through the ballroom, his face turning red with rage and humiliation. "Moretti, you have no business here. This is a private ceremony." Jackson didn't even glance at him. His eyes remained locked on Isabella, and something in that gaze made her breath catch in her throat. It wasn't the cold indifference she'd expected from a man with his reputation. It was something else, something intense and almost pained. "I apologize for the interruption," Jackson said, his voice smooth and controlled, carrying easily through the silent ballroom. "But I'm afraid this wedding cannot proceed." Marco stepped forward, his hand instinctively moving toward his waistband before he remembered where he was. "You're out of your mind, Moretti. Isabella is my fiancée, and in 5 minutes, she'll be my wife. Whatever game you're playing, she's not your fiancée." Jackson's voice cut through Marco's words like ice. He took 3 steps forward, and the crowd parted before him as if by instinct. "She can't be your fiancé Castellano because she's already married." The ballroom erupted in chaos. Gasps, shouts. Carmela Venturi looked like she might faint. Vittorio's face went from red to purple. Marco stood frozen, his mouth open in shock. But Isabella felt the world tilt on its axis. "What are you talking about?" she heard herself say, her voice barely above a whisper, but somehow audible in the sudden hush that fell over the room. Jackson finally looked away from her, turning to address the assembled crowd. 3 years ago, Isabella Venturi and I were married in a private ceremony in Vermont. We have the certificate, witnessed and legally binding, which means this wedding," he gestured around the ballroom, "is not only impossible, but would constitute bigamy." "That's a lie!" Vittorio roared, lunging forward. 2 of Jackson's men moved to intercept him. "My daughter has never even met you. This is a fabrication, a desperate attempt to—" "Is it?" Jackson pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket, holding it up for everyone to see. "This is a certified copy of our marriage certificate, dated October 15th, 3 years ago, St. Michael's Chapel in Burlington, Vermont. Witnessed by Father Thomas O'Brien and notarized by the state." Isabella's vision blurred. October 15th, 3 years ago. She remembered that date, remembered the trip her family had taken to Vermont, ostensibly for a family friend's birthday, remembered being separated from her family for several hours, told it was for a private meeting with potential business partners, remembered waking up the next morning with a pounding headache and fragments of memories she'd convinced herself were dreams. A chapel, flowers, a man in black, words spoken that she couldn't quite recall, a signature on a document she'd been too confused to read properly. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, that's not. That can't be." Jackson's expression softened slightly as he looked at her again. "I know this is a shock, Isabella. I know you probably don't remember most of it. They made sure of that." "They?" Marco demanded. "Who's they? What kind of sick story are you spinning here?" "Your father," Jackson said quietly, looking directly at Vittorio. "And my father. They arranged it. A secret marriage, sealed and hidden to be revealed at precisely the right moment. That moment is now." The silence that fell over the ballroom was absolute. Even the servers standing against the walls seemed to have stopped breathing. Vittorio Venturi's face had gone from purple to white. "You're insane. My brother-in-law would never—" "Your brother-in-law, Antonio Russo, brokered the deal," Jackson interrupted. "My father wanted an alliance with the Venturi family that couldn't be broken. Your father wanted insurance against the Castellanos, so they created one. Me and Isabella, bound by law and by blood, whether we knew it or not." Isabella felt her knees weaken. Her father caught her arm, but she pulled away, staring at him with dawning horror. "Dad?" Her voice cracked. "Tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't." Vittorio wouldn't meet her eyes. And in that moment, Isabella knew. It was all true. Every word. She'd been married for 3 years to Jackson Moretti, the most dangerous man in New York, and she'd never even known it. "This wedding is over," Jackson announced to the room. Then he looked directly at Isabella, extending his hand toward her. "It's time to come home, Mrs. Moretti." The ballroom exploded into chaos once more, but Isabella heard none of it. She stared at Jackson's outstretched hand, at the platinum ring on his left ring finger that matched the one she'd found in her jewelry box years ago and never understood, at the man who was apparently her husband. And she realized that her life as she'd known it had just ended. The only question now was, what would begin in its place? The silence that followed Jackson's declaration lasted only seconds, but to Isabella it felt like hours. Then, all at once, the ballroom exploded into pandemonium. "Security!" Marco Castellano's voice cut through the noise like a whip. "Remove this man immediately." But no one moved. The security guards, positioned strategically around the ballroom, remained frozen in place. They knew better than to lay hands on Jackson Moretti. Men who made that mistake didn't live to regret it. You cannot seriously expect anyone to believe this farce. Carmela Venturi's shrill voice rose above the chaos. She pointed a trembling finger at Jackson, her carefully maintained composure cracking. My daughter has been living under our roof for 3 years. If she were married, we would know. Jackson's cold blue eyes shifted to Carmela, and something in his gaze made her step back involuntarily. Would you? Or did you simply choose not to see what was inconvenient? How dare you? Vittorio began, but Jackson cut him off with a raised hand. Enough. His single word carried such authority that the entire ballroom fell silent. Isabella, look at me. She didn't want to. Every instinct told her to run, to flee this nightmare, to wake up and find herself back in her bedroom, preparing for a normal, predictable, safe wedding to Marco Castellano. But her body betrayed her, her eyes lifting to meet Jackson's. Up close, he was even more intimidating than his reputation suggested. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jawline marked by a faint scar near his left ear, and those eyes, pale blue like winter ice, but burning with an intensity that made her heart race. Do you remember Vermont? He asked quietly. His voice meant only for her despite the hundreds watching. St. Michael's Chapel? It was raining that day. You wore a simple white dress. Not this? He gestured at her elaborate wedding gown with something like distaste. Costume. Isabella's breath caught. Fragments of memory flickered through her mind like an old film reel. Rain against stained glass windows. The smell of candles and old wood. A hand, his hand, sliding a ring onto her finger while she stood in a fog, her mind clouded by something she couldn't name. I can't. She pressed her palm to her forehead, feeling dizzy. They drugged you, Jackson said bluntly, and gasps rippled through the crowd. Not enough to knock you unconscious, but enough to make you compliant. Enough to make you forget. That's a goddamn lie, Vittorio roared, lunging forward again. This time Jackson's men didn't stop him. Jackson did, catching Vittorio's wrist in an iron grip that made the older man wince. Is it? Jackson's voice was dangerously soft. Should we ask Dr. Richard Morrison, the physician who administered the sedative before the ceremony? I believe he's currently enjoying retirement in the Cayman Islands, courtesy of Venturi family funds. Vittorio's face went pale. He jerked his arm free, stumbling backward. The pieces were falling into place in Isabella's mind with horrifying clarity. The business trip to Vermont. The private dinner where she'd felt inexplicably drowsy after the first course. The missing hours she'd never quite been able to account for. The strange ring that had appeared in her jewelry box, which her mother had dismissed as a gift from a distant relative. Why? The word escaped her lips before she could stop it. She looked at her father, tears burning her eyes. Why would you do this to me? Vittorio's expression hardened. To protect you. To protect this family. The Moretti alliance was necessary 3 years ago, when they controlled the ports and we needed access. But circumstances changed. The Castellano marriage offers more now. Political connections, legitimate business opportunities, a way out of the shadows. So you sold me twice, Isabella said, her voice hollow. Once to him, and now to Marco. Like I'm a piece of property to be traded. It's not like that, Principessa. Vittorio tried to soften his tone, using his old pet name for her. You don't understand the complexity of our world. Sometimes sacrifices must be made for the greater good of the family. Sacrifices? Isabella laughed, a bitter sound that surprised even herself. You sacrificed my freedom, my choices, my life, and you didn't even have the courage to tell me the truth. Marco Castellano stepped forward, his handsome face twisted with rage. This is all very touching, but I don't give a damn about your sob story, Moretti. That marriage certificate is meaningless. It was obtained under duress and deception. Any lawyer would have it annulled in 5 minutes. Jackson smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Feel free to try. I have 3 years of documentation, joint tax returns, property deeds with both our names, bank accounts, credit cards, all legal, all traceable, all proving that Isabella Venturi ceased to exist 3 years ago. Mrs. Isabella Moretti, however, has been quite active. Isabella felt the room spin. What are you talking about? Your signature on dozens of documents, Jackson explained, his tone almost apologetic. Forged, yes, but perfectly legal in the eyes of the law. Your father was quite thorough in maintaining the illusion while keeping you in the dark. All eyes turned to Vittorio, who suddenly looked decades older. It was insurance, he muttered, in case the Castellano deal fell through. In case we needed the Moretti alliance again. You kept me married without my knowledge, Isabella said slowly. trying to process the enormity of the betrayal for 3 years, while letting me believe I was free to marry Marco, while planning this entire wedding, while, her voice broke, while lying to my face every single day. Sophia pushed through the crowd, grabbing Isabella's hand. Bella, I didn't know, I swear I didn't know any of this. Isabella squeezed her sister's hand, the only real connection she felt to anything in this moment. I know, Soph. I know. This is insane! Marco slammed his fist on the nearest table, making champagne glasses jump. I won't accept this. Isabella is mine. We've been engaged for 8 months. We've built a relationship, made plans. Have you? Jackson interrupted, his gaze shifting to Isabella. Tell me, Isabella, did you choose Marco? Or was he chosen for you? The truth must have shown on her face because Jackson nodded slowly. I thought so. Choice? Marco laughed harshly. You think you're giving her a choice? You're as bad as Vittorio claiming ownership based on a ceremony she doesn't even remember. You're right, Jackson said, surprising everyone. He turned back to Isabella, and for the first time, she saw something other than cold calculation in his eyes. Something that looked almost like regret. I'm not here to force you into anything, Isabella. I'm here to give you what no one else has. The truth and a choice. He took a step closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something dark and woodsy that seemed to fit him perfectly. You are legally my wife, that's a fact. But you were robbed of your consent, your memories, your agency. I can't change what my father and yours did, but I can give you options now. Options? Isabella's voice was barely a whisper. Option 1, you come with me. We acknowledge the marriage, we make it real. I won't lie to you. My world is dangerous, but you'll be protected, respected, and most importantly, you'll know the truth, always. He paused, his jaw tightening slightly before continuing. Option 2, we pursue an annulment. It will be messy, expensive, and public. The media will have a field day. Both families will be humiliated. But if that's what you want, I'll do it. I'll give you the freedom to choose whoever or whatever you want. And option 3? Marco interjected sarcastically. She marries me anyway and you crawl back into whatever hole you came from? Jackson's smile was predatory. Option 3 doesn't exist, Castellano. She's not yours to marry. She never was. Isabella's mind reeled. 3 years of her life, stolen. A husband she'd never known she had. A wedding that was built on lies. And now, in front of hundreds of witnesses, she was being asked to choose her future. I need to see it, she said suddenly. The marriage certificate. The proof. Jackson nodded, pulling out the document again and handing it to her. Isabella unfolded it with trembling hands, her eyes scanning the official seals, the signatures, the date. And there it was. Her signature. Shaky, uncertain, but unmistakably hers. Next to Jackson Moretti's firm, confident scrawl, Mrs. Isabella Moretti, a name she'd carried for 3 years without knowing it. She looked up at Jackson, really seeing him for the first time. Behind the cold exterior, the dangerous reputation, the calculated moves, she saw something else. A man who had apparently been married to a woman who didn't know he existed. A man who could have revealed this secret at any time but had waited until now. Why today? She asked. Why interrupt the wedding? Why not come forward months ago when Marco and I got engaged? Jackson's expression darkened. Because I only found out the full extent of your father's deception 2 weeks ago. When my father died, he left instructions about this marriage, but he also left other information about what Vittorio had been planning, about how he intended to have our marriage quietly annulled after your wedding to Castellano, erasing any evidence it had ever existed. He glanced at Vittorio with contempt. Your father was going to erase you from my life completely, Isabella. Make it as if you'd never existed. I couldn't let that happen. Because of love, Marco sneered. The great Jackson Moretti suddenly a romantic? Because of honor, Jackson corrected coldly. Something you wouldn't understand, Castellano. She's my wife. Whatever the circumstances, whatever was done to her, that means something to me. It means I protect her. It means I give her choices her own family denied her. Isabella felt tears streaming down her face, ruining her carefully applied makeup. Everything she'd believed about her life was a lie. Her father, her family, her engagement, all built on deception and manipulation. She looked at Marco, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. He wasn't concerned about her well-being or her feelings. He was angry about losing a business deal, about being humiliated in front of his family and associates. Then she looked at Jackson, a stranger, A dangerous man with a reputation for violence and ruthlessness, but also, apparently, her husband. A man who had crossed enemy lines to tell her the truth when everyone else had conspired to keep her in darkness. "I need time," she said finally, her voice stronger than she felt. "I can't make this decision now, like this, with everyone watching." Jackson nodded slowly. "Fair enough. Take the time you need." But Isabella, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone, placing it in her hand. "When you're ready to talk, call me. That phone is secure. No one can trace it or listen in, including your family." She took the phone, her fingers brushing against his. An electric shock seemed to pass between them, making her breath catch. "And until you decide," Jackson continued, his voice carrying through the ballroom once more, "let me make one thing perfectly clear to everyone here." His gaze swept across the assembled guests, cold and absolute. "Isabella Moretti is under my protection. Anyone who attempts to harm her, manipulate her, or force her into anything against her will answer to me. And I promise you my retribution will be swift and absolute." The threat hung in the air like a blade. No one doubted he meant every word. Jackson turned to leave, his men falling into formation around him. But at the door he paused and looked back at Isabella one final time. "Welcome to the truth, Mrs. Moretti. I'm sorry it took so long to reach you." Then he was gone, leaving behind a ballroom full of shocked guests, a wedding in ruins, and a bride who suddenly didn't know who she was anymore. Isabella stood frozen in her $1,000 dress, holding a phone that connected her to a husband she'd never known, and realized that her life would never be the same again. The only question was, what would she do about it? The ballroom remained frozen in stunned silence for exactly 10 seconds after Jackson Moretti's departure. Then chaos erupted like a dam breaking. Guests surged forward, voices rising in a cacophony of shock, outrage, and barely concealed excitement. This was the scandal of the decade, and everyone wanted to be part of it. Camera phones emerged despite the strict no photography policy, capturing Isabella's tear-streaked face and designer gown that now felt like a costume from someone else's life. "Everyone out!" Vittorio's voice boomed across the ballroom, his face contorted with rage and humiliation. "This ceremony is postponed. Leave now." "Postponed?" Marco strode toward Isabella, grabbing her arm roughly. "There's nothing to postpone. This is a fraud, a trick, and we're not falling for it. Isabella, tell them. Tell them you're marrying me." Isabella jerked her arm free, her green eyes flashing with an anger that surprised even herself. "Don't touch me." "What?" Marco looked genuinely shocked, as if the idea that she might have her own thoughts on the matter had never occurred to him. "I said don't touch me." Isabella's voice was steadier now, fueled by 3 years of suppressed frustration finally finding its target. "You heard everything Jackson said. You saw the marriage certificate. Whether I like it or not, whether I remember it or not, I'm legally married to him. This wedding can't happen. We'll get an annulment," Marco began, but Isabella cut him off. "We? There is no we, Marco. There never really was. My father arranged this marriage the same way he arranged the last one. Did you ever once ask me what I wanted? Did you ever care?" Marco's handsome face darkened. "I cared enough to offer you legitimacy, a life outside this criminal underworld. The Castellano name means something in proper society. What does Moretti offer you? A target on your back? A life looking over your shoulder?" "He offered me the truth," Isabella said quietly, "which is more than you or my father ever did." "The truth?" Carmela Venturi pushed through the dispersing crowd, her perfectly composed mask finally cracking. "The truth is that you're being hysterical, Isabella. That man drugged you, forced you into a sham marriage, and now he's using it to destroy this family. And you're falling for it." "He drugged me?" Isabella's laugh was harsh. "No, Mother. According to Jackson, Dr. Morrison drugged me, on Father's orders. Or are you going to deny that too?" Carmela's silence was answer enough. Sophia stepped between Isabella and their mother, her young face fierce with protective anger. "Stop it, all of you. Can't you see what you've done to her? She just found out her entire life has been a lie and you're still trying to manipulate her. Sophia, stay out of this," Vittorio warned. "You don't understand the complexities." "I understand enough," Sophia shot back. "I understand that you sold your daughter like property twice. I understand that you lied to her for 3 years. I understand that you care more about your alliances and your power than you do about her happiness. How dare you speak to me that way?" Vittorio stepped toward Sophia, his hand raised. "Touch her, and it will be the last thing you do." Isabella's voice was ice. She stepped in front of her sister, the phone Jackson had given her clutched in her hand like a weapon. "You've taken enough from me, Father. You won't touch Sophia. You won't touch me. Not anymore." For a moment, Vittorio looked like he might strike her anyway, but something in Isabella's eyes, a hardness that had never been there before, made him lower his hand. "You're upset," he said, attempting a gentler tone. "Understandably so. But once you calm down, you'll see reason. Moretti is playing games with you, Isabella. Whatever his motives, they're not in your best interest. And yours are?" Isabella shook her head. "I'm done, Father. Done with your games, your lies, your schemes. I need to think, and I can't do that here, surrounded by people who've done nothing but deceive me." She turned to leave, still wearing her wedding gown, but Vittorio's voice stopped her. "If you walk out that door, Isabella, you're choosing Moretti over your family. Is that really what you want?" Isabella looked back at him, and for the first time in her life, she saw her father clearly, not as the powerful patriarch who commanded respect and fear, but as a manipulative man who valued control over love, power over family. "I'm not choosing Moretti," she said quietly. "I'm choosing myself. For the first time in my life, I'm making my own choice, and I choose to leave." "Isabella," Marco started, but she held up her hand. "Don't. Whatever you were going to say, just don't. You never loved me, Marco. I was convenient, a good match, a useful alliance. But you never once looked at me and saw a person. Just another piece on your family's chessboard." The truth of her words hung in the air. Marco's face flushed, but he didn't deny it. Isabella turned to Sophia. "Come with me." "Where?" Sophia asked, but she was already moving toward her sister. "Away from here. We'll figure out the rest later." "You can't just leave." Carmela's voice rose to a near shriek. "Your things are at home, your accounts are under family control, you have nowhere to go." Isabella held up the phone Jackson had given her. "I think I have somewhere." She didn't wait for their response. With Sophia's hand gripped tightly in hers, Isabella walked down the white-carpeted aisle, not toward a groom and a future that had been chosen for her, but toward the exit and an uncertain freedom she was choosing for herself. Behind them, she heard Marco's angry shouts, her father's commands for security to stop them, her mother's wailing about the shame and the scandal, but no one actually tried to stop them. Perhaps they were too shocked, or perhaps they finally understood that Isabella Venturi, Isabella Moretti, was done being controlled. The hotel lobby was a blur of startled faces as two women in formal wear, one in a wedding gown worth $50,000, the other in a lavender bridesmaid dress, rushed through the marble halls toward the main entrance. Outside, the October rain that had been threatening all day had finally begun to fall. Cold drops splashed against Isabella's bare shoulders, immediately soaking through the delicate lace of her dress. The New York streets were crowded with the usual early evening traffic, yellow cabs honking, pedestrians rushing past with umbrellas. Isabella stood on the sidewalk, rain streaming down her face mixing with tears she hadn't realized she was crying. Sophia wrapped her arms around her sister, both of them shivering in the autumn downpour. "What now?" Sophia asked, her voice small and uncertain. Isabella looked down at the phone in her hand, sleek, black, expensive, a lifeline from a man she didn't know, a husband she couldn't remember. Her only option in a city that suddenly felt hostile and foreign. She opened the phone. There was only one contact saved. Jackson. Her thumb hovered over the call button. Once she pressed it, there would be no going back. She would be stepping into Jackson Moretti's world. A world of danger, violence, and shadows. Everything she'd been taught to fear. But hadn't she already been living in that world? Just from the other side, surrounded by lies and manipulation, believing herself safe when she was really just a prisoner in a gilded cage. At least Jackson had offered her truth. At least he had given her a choice. Isabella pressed the button. The phone rang twice before his deep voice answered. Isabella, just her name. Not a question, not surprise, as if he'd been waiting. "I need..." She paused, suddenly unsure what to say. What did she need? Safety, answers, revenge, all of it? "I need somewhere to go, somewhere they can't find me. Can you? Where are you?" Jackson's voice was calm, controlled, but she could hear an undercurrent of something else. Concern, protectiveness. "Outside the Belmore, on 5th Avenue. It's raining and Her voice cracked. "I don't know what to do." "Stay where you are, I'm sending a car. It will be there in 3 minutes. Black SUV, license plate BMR 7734. The driver's name is Marcus." Don't get in any other vehicle, understand? Yes, Isabella. His voice softened slightly. You did the right thing. Calling me. Leaving. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you did. The line went dead before she could respond. True to his word, exactly 3 minutes later, a black Escalade pulled up to the curb. A man in his 40s, built like a linebacker, stepped out of the driver's seat. He had kind eyes that seemed at odds with his intimidating physique. Mrs. Moretti? He said respectfully. I'm Marcus. Mr. Moretti sent me to collect you. His gaze shifted to Sophia. And your guest. My sister Sophia, Isabella said. She comes with me, non-negotiable. Marcus nodded without hesitation. Of course, ma'am. Mr. Moretti expected as much. Please, both of you, get out of the rain. He opened the rear door and Isabella hesitated for only a moment before climbing in. Sophia right behind her. The interior was warm, leather seats heating automatically. Soft music played from hidden speakers. Marcus handed them each a blanket and a bottle of water before returning to the driver's seat. As the SUV pulled away from the Belmore Hotel, Isabella looked back through the rain-streaked window. She could see figures emerging from the entrance. Her father, Marco, security personnel, searching for her, but they were already too late. Where are we going? Sophia asked quietly, wrapped in her blanket. I don't know, Isabella admitted, but anywhere is better than back there. The drive took about 20 minutes, heading uptown into a part of Manhattan Isabella rarely visited. The buildings here were older, more distinguished, exuding quiet wealth rather than flashy opulence. Marcus finally pulled up in front of a historic brownstone on a tree-lined street in the Upper West Side. We're here, Marcus announced. Mr. Moretti is waiting inside. The brownstone was elegant without being ostentatious. 4 stories of classic New York architecture, with ivy climbing the brick facade and warm light glowing from tall windows. Nothing about it screamed, mob boss headquarters. It looked more like a professor's house or perhaps a successful lawyer's residence. Marcus escorted them up the stone steps and opened the heavy wooden door. Inside, the house was beautifully appointed. Hardwood floors, antique furniture, artwork that was clearly original rather than reproduction. But what struck Isabella most was that it felt lived in, real, unlike the cold, museum-like perfection of her father's mansion. Jackson appeared at the top of the staircase, having changed from his black suit into dark jeans and a charcoal sweater. He looked different like this. Still dangerous, still commanding, but somehow more approachable. More human. Isabella. Sophia. He descended the stairs with easy grace. I'm glad you're safe. Marcus. Thank you. Please make sure the perimeter is secure. Yes, sir. Marcus disappeared down a hallway. Jackson's eyes swept over Isabella's soaked wedding gown and ruined makeup, but his expression remained neutral. You're freezing. Come on. Let's get you both into dry clothes and somewhere warm. He led them up the stairs to the second floor, opening doors to reveal a guest bedroom that was larger and more comfortable than Isabella's room at her father's house. Sophia, this room is yours for as long as you need it, Jackson said. There's a bathroom through there and I'll have clothes brought up. They might be a bit big, but they'll be warm and dry. Sophia looked uncertainly at Isabella, who nodded. It's okay, Soph. Thank you, Jackson. After Sophia disappeared into the bedroom, Jackson gestured for Isabella to follow him further down the hall to another room, this one even larger, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a private garden. This is the master suite, he said quietly. It's yours. Isabella looked at him sharply. Yours, you mean? No, yours. Jackson leaned against the doorframe, maintaining a respectful distance. I know what you're thinking, that I brought you here to claim my rights as your husband or something equally medieval. That's not what this is. Then what is it? Jackson was quiet for a moment, seeming to choose his words carefully. 3 years ago, I went through with a marriage I didn't want to a woman I'd never met because my father demanded it. I was angry. I felt trapped. And then I found out you'd been drugged, manipulated, robbed of your consent, that you didn't even know you were married to me. He pushed off the doorframe, walking to the window. I could have revealed the truth at any time. Could have shown up at your door and said, surprise, we're married. But what would that have accomplished? You would have hated me, hated the situation, and you still would have been a prisoner, just in a different cage. So why reveal it now? Isabella asked. Because your father was planning to erase the marriage completely, forge annulment documents, bribe officials, make it disappear, and then lock you into a marriage with Castellano that would have been just as much a prison as ours. Jackson turned back to face her. I couldn't let that happen. Not without giving you at least one chance to make your own choice. Isabella sank onto the edge of the bed, exhausted beyond measure. Some choice. Marry Marco or stay married to you. Both arranged by my father. Both without my real consent. No. Jackson's voice was firm. You have more choices than that. You can stay here safe and protected while we pursue an annulment. You can go anywhere else in the world you want. I'll fund it, protect you, make sure your family can't touch you. Or, he paused, or you can give this marriage a real chance. Not the one our fathers forced on us, but one we choose. Starting from the beginning, getting to know each other, seeing if there's anything worth building. Isabella looked up at him, searching his face for deception or manipulation, but she saw only honesty and exhaustion that mirrored her own. Why would you want that? She asked. A real marriage with me? You don't know me. I don't know you. True, Jackson admitted, but we have the rest of our lives to fix that, if we want to. He moved toward the door. Take your time. Shower, rest, think. We'll talk more tomorrow. For now, you're safe here. Both you and Sophia. He was almost out the door when Isabella called out. Jackson? He turned back. Thank you, she said quietly, for telling me the truth, for giving me options, for not being what I expected. A small, genuine smile crossed his face, the first real one she'd seen. You're not what I expected either, Isabella, and I'm beginning to think that might not be a bad thing. After he left, Isabella sat alone in the master suite of a house that belonged to her husband, a man she'd been married to for 3 years without knowing it. Outside, rain continued to fall on New York City. Somewhere across town, her family was dealing with the scandal and humiliation. Marco was probably raging about broken contracts and damaged pride. But here, in this quiet room, Isabella felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. And the terrifying, exhilarating possibility of freedom. Whatever came next, whatever she decided, it would be her choice. For the first time in her life, her future was her own to write. Even if she had no idea what story she wanted to tell. Isabella woke to unfamiliar sounds. Not the usual clatter of servants in her father's mansion, but something softer. Birds chirping outside the window. The distant hum of city traffic muted by thick walls and old trees. For a moment, disoriented and groggy, she forgot where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The interrupted wedding, Jackson's revelation, her father's betrayal, her flight through the rain. She sat up in the massive bed, wearing borrowed clothes. Soft cotton pajamas that were indeed too large, the sleeves hanging past her fingertips. Morning light filtered through sheer curtains, painting the room in shades of gold and cream. The bedside clock read 9:47 a.m. She'd slept for 12 hours. A soft knock at the door made her tense. Yes? It's me, Bella. Sophia's voice was muffled through the heavy wood. Can I come in? Of course. Sophia entered, also wearing borrowed clothes, sweatpants and an oversized Columbia University hoodie. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and without makeup, she looked impossibly young, just 21. Isabella suddenly felt the weight of being the older sister, the protector, even though she felt equally lost. How did you sleep? Isabella asked. Better than I should have, given everything. Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, pulling her knees to her chest. This place is not what I expected. It's actually nice. Normal even. I know what you mean. They sat in silence for a moment before Sophia spoke again, her voice small. Bella, what are we going to do? Mom has called my phone 37 times. Dad has left 17 voicemails. They're furious. Isabella's stomach tightened. You don't have to stay here, Soph. You didn't sign up for this mess. You can go back. Are you kidding? Sophia's eyes flashed with determination. Go back to them after what they did to you? After 3 years of lying to your face? No way. I meant what I said yesterday. I'm with you. Whatever you decide. Tears pricked Isabella's eyes. Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'd figure it out. You're stronger than you think. Sophia paused. Speaking of figuring things out, have you seen Jackson this morning? No. Why? He left a note under my door. Said breakfast is ready whenever we are, and that we should come downstairs when we're comfortable. No pressure. Sophia tilted her head. He's not what the stories say, is he? Isabella thought about Jackson's cold reputation. The ruthless boss who'd allegedly killed rivals without mercy, who'd expanded the Black Mafia's territory through violence and intimidation. Then she thought about the man who'd given her choices, who'd protected her and Sophia, who'd kept a respectful distance despite technically being her husband. I don't know what he is yet, Isabella admitted. But you're right. He's not what I expected. 30 minutes later, after showering and dressing in more borrowed clothes, jeans and a soft cashmere sweater that fit surprisingly well, Isabella and Sophia descended the stairs together. The smell of coffee and fresh bread drew them toward what turned out to be a spacious, sun-filled kitchen. Jackson stood at the stove cooking. Actually cooking, not directing servants or ordering takeout. He wore jeans and a simple black t-shirt, his dark hair slightly damp as if he'd recently showered. The domesticity of the scene was jarring. "Good morning," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "I hope you're hungry. I may have made too much food." The kitchen island was indeed laden with options. Scrambled eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, pastries, bagels with an array of spreads. Coffee steamed in a French press. "You cooked all this?" Sophia asked, her surprise evident. Jackson smiled slightly. "My mother insisted all her children learn to cook. Said we shouldn't rely on others for basic survival skills." He gestured to the island. "Please, sit. Eat." As they settled onto bar stools, a woman in her 50s entered through a side door. Elegant, with silver-streaked hair and warm brown eyes. She carried a stack of shopping bags. Perfect timing," Jackson said. "Isabella, Sophia, this is Elena Rodriguez. She manages the household and has been my family's friend for 20 years. Elena, my wife, and her sister." Elena's smile was genuine and kind. "It's wonderful to finally meet you both, though I wish the circumstances were happier. I've brought some clothes that should fit. We can go shopping for more later if you'd like." "Thank you," Isabella said, surprised by the woman's warmth. "That's very thoughtful." "It's nothing, dear. Jackson called me last night and explained the situation. Well, some of it. Enough to know you've had a difficult time." Elena set the bags on a nearby chair. "I'll leave you all to breakfast. If you need anything at all, just call." After Elena left, the three of them ate in relative silence. Not uncomfortable, but cautious. Isabella felt hyper-aware of every movement, every glance. This man sitting across from her, casually eating eggs and reading something on his phone, was legally her husband. A stranger who knew more about her life than she did. "I imagine you have questions," Jackson said finally, setting down his phone. "Ask me anything. No more secrets, no more lies. That's the promise I'm making to you." Isabella took a breath. "Start with the beginning. How did this marriage really happen? I want every detail you know." Jackson nodded, as if he'd expected this. 3 years ago, my father, Vincent Moretti, approached your father about an alliance. The Venturi family controlled certain routes into the city that we needed. In exchange, we could offer protection and expanded territory. But our families had been rivals for decades. Trust was minimal. He poured himself more coffee before continuing. "My father proposed a marriage as insurance. Old-fashioned, yes, but effective. You tie two families by blood and law and betrayal becomes much costlier. Your father agreed, but with conditions. The marriage had to be secret, at least initially. He didn't want to appear weak to his allies by openly allying with us. And he wanted insurance of his own, the ability to dissolve the union if a better option came along." "The Castellanos," Isabella said bitterly. "Exactly. The Castellanos had been courting an alliance with the Venturis for years. They offered legitimacy, political connections, a path into legal business ventures, things our family couldn't provide." Jackson's jaw tightened. "So your father agreed to the marriage with me, but kept it secret from you. The drugs, the manipulation, the hidden documents, all designed to give him maximum flexibility." Sophia leaned forward. "But you knew? You knew Isabella was drugged? That she didn't really consent?" Jackson's expression darkened with something that looked like shame. "Not at first. I was told you'd agreed to the arrangement, that you understood what was happening. I was 25, angry at my father for forcing this on me, and I didn't ask enough questions. I went through with the ceremony, signed the papers, and then nothing. My father said you needed time, that the marriage would be revealed when the timing was right. And you just accepted that?" Isabella couldn't keep the anger from her voice. "No." Jackson met her eyes directly. "I started investigating. About 6 months after the ceremony, I hired a private investigator to look into you, to see what kind of woman I'd married, even if from a distance. That's when I learned the truth, that you had no memory of the wedding, that you were living your life as Isabella Venturi, not Isabella Moretti, that my father and yours had orchestrated the whole thing without your real consent." He stood, pacing to the window. "I confronted my father. We had the worst fight of my life. He said it was necessary, that alliances required sacrifice, that I was being naive about the realities of our world. I told him it was wrong, that no alliance built on that kind of deception could last. He said I'd understand when I was older, when I had the responsibility of leading the family. What did you do? Isabella asked quietly. I made a decision. I couldn't undo the marriage without exposing you to danger and scandal, but I could wait, watch over you from a distance, make sure you were safe even if you didn't know I existed, and I swore that if the truth ever had to come out, I'd give you real choices, not the fake ones our fathers forced on us. Jackson turned back to face them. For 3 years I've had people watching you, not to control you but to protect you, making sure Marco Castellano treated you well during your engagement, ensuring your father didn't try anything worse, and investigating exactly what had been done in your name. The forged signatures, the joint accounts, all the legal mechanisms that tied us together. Isabella felt a chill. You've been watching me for 3 years? Yes. He didn't apologize or try to soften it. I know how that sounds. Controlling, obsessive, creepy even. But Isabella, in our world, knowledge is protection. Your father has enemies. Marco Castellano has enemies. And as my wife, whether you knew it or not, you were vulnerable. I couldn't let anything happen to you. What kind of things did you know about me? The question came out almost like a whisper. Jackson hesitated, then seemed to decide on honesty. I know you volunteer at St. Catherine's homeless shelter every Thursday morning. I know you love modern art but pretend to prefer classical because your mother thinks it's more refined. I know you take ballet classes at the studio on 82nd Street because it's the only place you feel truly free. I know your favorite coffee shop is the little place on Madison that nobody knows about. I know you cry during sad movies but hide it because your father always said emotions were weakness. He paused, his voice softening. And I know that for 3 years you've been planning that wedding to Marco with a smile on your face while looking increasingly like you were walking toward a prison cell. Isabella felt exposed, vulnerable, and strangely seen all at once. This man, this stranger, knew her in ways no one else did. Not because he'd asked, not because she'd shared, but because he'd watched, protected, waited. That's insane, Sophia breathed. That's actually kind of romantic in a really twisted way. It's not romantic, Jackson said firmly. It's a violation of privacy, but it was also necessary. In my world, information keeps people alive. Ignorance gets them killed. Isabella stood, needing to move, to think. She walked to the window, looking out at the small private garden behind the brownstone. Morning light illuminated roses, jasmine, and a small fountain. It was beautiful, peaceful, nothing like the world Jackson was describing. So what now? She asked, not turning around. You've told me the truth. I'm here in your house, legally your wife. What happens next? That depends entirely on you, Jackson replied. As I said last night, you have options. Walk me through them. Specifically, Jackson moved to stand near her, though still maintaining that respectful distance. Option 1, annulment. It will be complicated given how long we've been married and the documentation trail, but it's possible. I have lawyers who can make it happen within 6 months, maybe less. You'd walk away free, with enough money to start over anywhere you want. I'd ensure your family can't touch you or force you into anything else. Option 2, Isabella prompted. Divorce. Cleaner than annulment, but it means acknowledging the marriage publicly. There would be a settlement, division of assets, though honestly, everything would go to you anyway. Timeline would be similar, 6 months to a year. And option 3? Jackson was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. We stay married, but we do it right this time. We start over, get to know each other, see if there's any possibility of making this real. No pressure, no expectations, no timeline. You'd live here or anywhere else you prefer. We'd date, essentially, except we'd already be married. That's insane, Isabella said, echoing her sister's earlier words. Maybe, but our marriage already exists. The question is whether we try to make something real out of what our fathers forced on us, or whether we erase it and go our separate ways. Isabella turned to face him. And what do you want, Jackson? Out of all these options, what do you actually want? He held her gaze, and for the first time she saw something unguarded in his ice-blue eyes. Vulnerability, hope, longing. Honestly, I want to know you. The real you. Not the version I've watched from a distance. I want to see if the woman I've been married to for 3 years is someone I could actually build a life with. And I want to give you something no one else in your life has ever given you. complete freedom to choose your own path, even if that path doesn't include me. Before Isabella could respond, Jackson's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression hardened. "What is it?" Isabella asked. "Your father. He's called an emergency meeting of the 5 families. He's claiming that I kidnapped you, that the marriage certificate is fraudulent, and that I'm holding you hostage." Jackson looked up, his jaw tight. "He's declaring war, Isabella. Unless you return within 24 hours, there's going to be bloodshed." The peaceful morning shattered like glass. Isabella felt the weight of her father's manipulation pressing down on her again, using her as a weapon even now. "What if I go back?" she asked. "What if I tell them the truth, that I came here willingly? They won't believe you, or they'll claim I'm coercing you. Your father is very good at controlling the narrative." Jackson pocketed his phone. "But there is another option." "What?" "We go public, announce the marriage, hold a press conference, show the documentation, let the whole world know the truth. Your father can't manipulate what's already public knowledge." Sophia stood up. "That would destroy the Venturi family's reputation. The scandal would be massive." "Yes," Jackson agreed. "It would also free Isabella from their control forever. They'd have no leverage, no ability to force her into anything. The truth would protect her." Isabella felt trapped between impossible choices. Stay silent and let her father's lies spark a war. Go back and lose the freedom she'd just found. Or burn down her family's legacy and reputation to save herself. "There has to be another way," she said desperately. Jackson stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes. "There is. You trust me. You let me handle the 5 families, negotiate with your father, and end this without bloodshed. But that means staying here, staying safe, and letting me protect you, really protect you, as your husband. And if I don't trust you, then we go public and let the chips fall where they may." "But Isabella," his voice dropped lower, more intense. "Either way, you're not going back to that house. You're not returning to your father's control. That part is non-negotiable." Isabella looked at this man who was technically her husband. A dangerous man with a violent reputation, who'd watched her for 3 years, who'd interrupted her wedding and turned her life upside down. A man who'd also given her truth, choices, and a protection she'd never known she needed. She thought about her father's manipulation, Marco's possessiveness, her mother's cold calculation. Then she thought about Jackson's honesty, his respect for her autonomy, his willingness to let her choose even when it might hurt him. The choice, when it came down to it, wasn't that difficult after all. "Okay," she said quietly. "Handle it. Talk to the 5 families. End this without war. I'll stay here and trust you to protect me." Something flickered in Jackson's eyes. Relief, gratitude, maybe something deeper. "You won't regret this." "I already regret everything about this situation," Isabella said with a slight, bitter smile. "But at least this regret is my choice." Jackson nodded, understanding. He pulled out his phone, already making calls, his voice shifting into the cold, commanding tone of the man who led the Black Mafia. As Isabella watched him transform from the man who'd cooked breakfast into the dangerous boss the world feared, she realized something profound. She'd spent 3 years married to Jackson Moretti without knowing it. Now she was going to spend however long it took to figure out who he really was, who she really was, and whether 2 people forced together by circumstance could ever find something real. Outside, storm clouds gathered over New York City once again. Another storm was coming, but this time Isabella would face it with her eyes wide open. And that made all the difference. The meeting was set for midnight at a neutral location, the old Carmichael warehouse in Red Hook, Brooklyn, a place that belonged to no family, respected by all, where disputes had been settled for 3 generations. Jackson dressed carefully that evening, and Isabella watched from the doorway of his study as he transformed once again. The comfortable man who'd made breakfast disappeared, replaced by something harder, colder. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost $10,000. Every line perfect, every detail calculated to project power. "You don't have to do this," Isabella said quietly. "We could just disappear, leave New York entirely." Jackson adjusted his cufflinks. Platinum, she noticed, engraved with the Moretti family crest. "Running would make us look weak. Weakness invites attacks. Besides," he turned to face her, "this is your city too. You shouldn't have to leave because your father can't accept the truth. What if they don't believe you? What if my father convinces them you're lying? Then I'll show them every piece of documentation, every witness statement, every bank record. I've spent 3 years building an unassailable case, Isabella. Your father can't dispute facts. His jaw tightened. And if he tries, he'll regret it. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Car's ready, boss. Team is in position. Jackson nodded, then looked back at Isabella. Stay here. Elena and 6 men will guard the house. Don't answer the door for anyone except me. If something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. Isabella interrupted, surprised by her own certainty. You'll handle it. Something softened in Jackson's expression. He crossed to her, hesitating only a moment before reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was gentle, almost reverent. I'll be back in a few hours, Mrs. Moretti, he said softly. Wait for me. Then he was gone, his footsteps echoing down the hallway, leaving Isabella with a strange flutter in her chest, and the realization that somewhere between yesterday's chaos and tonight's uncertainty, something had shifted. She was starting to trust him. The Carmichael warehouse was cold, cavernous, and filled with shadows. 5 tables arranged in a circle, 1 for each family. The Morettis, the Venturis, the Castellanos, the Russos, the DeMarcos, representatives from every major power in New York's underworld, gathered under exposed steel beams and flickering industrial lights. Jackson entered with Marcus and 3 others, their footsteps echoing on concrete. All eyes turned to him, some hostile, some curious, all wary. Vittorio Venturi sat at his family's table, flanked by his brother-in-law Antonio Russo and 2 enforcers. His face was carved from stone, revealing nothing, but his eyes burned with rage. Marco Castellano stood rather than sat, his expensive suit doing nothing to hide the violence in his posture. His father, Giovanni Castellano, placed a restraining hand on his son's arm. Moretti, Giovanni's voice carried authority earned over 40 years. You've disrupted the peace, explain yourself. Jackson moved to the center of the circle, unhurried, unintimidated. There's been no disruption, only the revelation of truth that certain parties tried to hide. You kidnapped my daughter, Vittorio's voice boomed through the warehouse. I rescued my wife, Jackson corrected calmly. There's a difference. He pulled out the marriage certificate, laying it on the center table for all to see. October 15th, 3 years ago. Legal, witnessed, notarized. Isabella Venturi became Isabella Moretti. Everything I've done since yesterday has been to protect what's mine. That certificate is fraudulent. Marco lunged forward, but his father held him back. Is it? Jackson produced another document. Here's the officiant's testimony. Father Thomas O'Brien, still alive, still practicing, willing to testify in court. Here's the notary's statement. Here are joint tax returns for 3 years. Bank accounts, property deeds, credit cards. He spread them across the table like playing cards. Deny it all you want, Castellano. The law says Isabella is mine. Antonio Russo leaned forward. Why reveal this now, Moretti? Why wait 3 years? Because Vittorio was planning to erase the marriage entirely and lock Isabella into a union with Castellano. I couldn't allow my wife to be traded like property twice. You speak of property? Vittorio's laugh was harsh. You who watched her for 3 years like a stalker? You who kept this secret as leverage? I kept this secret to protect her from exactly this, being used as a pawn in your games, Vittorio. Jackson's voice turned to ice. But yes, I watched her. I made sure she was safe. Something you failed to do while selling her to the highest bidder. The warehouse fell silent. Several family heads exchanged glances. The dynamics were shifting. Giovanni Castellano spoke carefully. If the marriage is legal, then Moretti has rights under our laws. The wedding yesterday couldn't have proceeded. This is insanity, Marco exploded. Isabella doesn't even know him. She doesn't want this marriage. Actually, Jackson pulled out his phone. She does. Isabella, if you're listening, tell them. Isabella's voice came through the speaker, clear and strong. I'm staying with Jackson voluntarily. I'm not kidnapped. I'm not coerced. I'm making my own choice for the first time in my life, and my choice is to remain with my husband. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Vittorio's face went white, then red. You've brainwashed her. I've given her truth and freedom, 2 things you never did. The other family heads began speaking among themselves. Jackson could see the calculation in their eyes. This dispute wasn't worth a war. The Moretti claim was legal, and Isabella herself had spoken. Finally, Carlo DeMarco, the eldest of the 5 bosses, stood. The marriage stands. Moretti acted within his rights. This matter is closed. No, Vittorio rose, shaking with fury. I don't accept. You don't have a choice, Venturi, DeMarco said coldly. You orchestrated this marriage 3 years ago. You can't now claim it doesn't exist because it's inconvenient. The girl chose Moretti. It's done. Jackson allowed himself a small smile of victory. He'd won. Isabella was his, legally, publicly, and by her own choice. As the families began to disperse, Jackson leaned close to Vittorio. She's mine now. Try to take her back, and I'll destroy everything you've built. Understood? Vittorio's eyes promised murder, but he said nothing. Jackson left the warehouse and headed home, to his wife. Isabella was waiting in the study when Jackson returned just after 2 in the morning. She'd tried to sleep but couldn't, her mind racing with possibilities and fears. When she heard the front door open, she rushed downstairs. Jackson stood in the foyer, removing his jacket. He looked tired but victorious. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. "It's over," he said simply. "The 5 families recognized our marriage. Your father has no legal claim. You're free." Isabella felt her knees weaken with relief. Free? Free to choose. Free to stay or go. Free to be whoever you want to be. Jackson moved closer, his voice softening. "But I'm hoping you'll choose to stay. At least long enough to see if we can build something real from this mess our fathers created." Isabella studied his face. The sharp features, the ice-blue eyes that weren't quite so cold anymore, the slight vulnerability hidden beneath layers of control. This man who'd protected her from the shadows, who'd given her truth when everyone else dealt in lies, who'd fought for her freedom even when it might mean losing her. "I've been thinking," she said slowly. "For 3 years I lived a life that wasn't really mine. I was who my father wanted me to be, doing what was expected, following rules I never agreed to. Even my engagement to Marco, I convinced myself I wanted it because it was easier than admitting I felt trapped. And now?" Jackson asked quietly. "Now I want to know who I really am, what I really want. And I can't do that by running away or by falling into another predetermined path." Isabella took a breath. "So yes, I'll stay. Not because we're legally married, not because you protected me, but because I want to. I want to see if 2 people who were forced together by circumstance can find something authentic." Jackson's expression transformed, the cold mask cracking to reveal genuine emotion, hope, relief, maybe even joy. "We'll do this right," he promised. "No pressure, no expectations. We'll date, get to know each other, build trust. You'll have your own space, your own life. I won't hover or control or demand anything from you. We'll just see what happens." "That sounds terrifying," Isabella admitted with a slight smile. "And exactly what I need." Jackson closed the distance between them, reaching for her hand. His fingers intertwined with hers, warm and steady. "Then let's start now. Hi, I'm Jackson Moretti. I'm 28 years old. I run a criminal organization I inherited too young. I'm addicted to terrible action movies, and I make excellent scrambled eggs. I've been married to you for 3 years, but I'm hoping we can start over and do this properly." Isabella laughed, a real laugh, free and unguarded. "Hi Jackson, I'm Isabella. I'm 25. I love modern art and ballet. I volunteer at homeless shelters because it makes me feel useful, and I have no idea who I really am yet. I've also been married to you for 3 years without knowing it, which is probably the strangest thing that's ever happened to me." "Nice to meet you, Isabella," Jackson said, his smile genuine and transformative. "Would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow night? Just the 2 of us. A proper first date." "I'd like that very much." They stood there in the foyer, hands clasped, 2 strangers who were somehow married, beginning the long journey of turning an arrangement into something real. Outside, dawn was breaking over New York City. The storm had passed, leaving the air clean and full of possibility. In the days that followed, Isabella discovered parts of herself she'd forgotten existed. She enrolled in art classes, spent hours in museums, reconnected with friends her father had discouraged. Sophia moved into her own apartment nearby, beginning her own journey of independence. And slowly, carefully, Isabella and Jackson built something neither had expected, a partnership based on honesty, respect, and growing affection. They had dinner dates where they talked for hours, movie nights where Jackson's terrible taste made her laugh, quiet mornings where they read newspapers together over coffee, moments of unexpected tenderness that caught them both off guard. It wasn't perfect. There were arguments about his dangerous work, difficult conversations about trust and boundaries, moments when their different worlds collided painfully, but through it all, they chose each other. Every day they chose to stay, to try, to build. 3 months after the interrupted wedding, on a snowy January evening, Isabella and Jackson stood in the same study where they'd had their first real conversation. "I've made a decision," Isabella said, her voice steady and sure. Jackson looked up from his desk, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. "About us?" "About us," she confirmed. "I don't want an annulment, I don't want a divorce, I want to make this marriage real. Not because of legal documents or family obligations or anything our fathers planned, but because I choose you, Jackson Moretti. I choose this life we're building together." Jackson stood, crossing to her in 3 long strides. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite his dangerous reputation. "Are you sure?" he asked. "This world, my world, it's not easy. It's not safe." "I'm sure," Isabella said. "Nothing about my life has ever been safe. But with you, for the first time, I feel free. And that's worth everything." Jackson kissed her then. Their first real kiss as husband and wife, as partners who'd chosen each other. It was soft and fierce all at once, full of promise and possibility. When they finally pulled apart, Isabella smiled. "So, Mr. Moretti, what do we do now?" Jackson grinned. "Now, Mrs. Moretti, we live on our own terms." And they did. The story that began with an interrupted wedding and a shocking revelation became something neither Isabella nor Jackson had imagined. A love story built on ashes of betrayal, stronger for having been tested, and entirely their own. In the end, the Chefe de Mafia Negra didn't just claim his wife. He gave her the one thing she'd never had, the freedom to choose her own destiny. And she chose him.